So, you've probably been hearing a lot of chatter about a new $2,000 check from the government. Is it for real? Is it actually happening? Today, we're going to cut through all that noise and give you the straight up facts based on what's really been said. Let's dive in. All right, so let's get right to it. The big question on everyone's mind, is a new $2,000 government check really on its way? It's the kind of headline that grabs your attention, for sure. But the answer, well, it isn't a simple yes or no. It all stems from one very specific proposal that's been making the rounds. And here it is. This is the quote that really kicked this whole thing off. On November 17th, Donald Trump said this, and he specifically used the word dividends. This statement is the ground zero, the direct source for all the speculation about a $2,000 payment. Okay, so dividends, that's a specific word. What does it actually mean in this context? Well, when you boil it all down, the core idea is pretty straightforward. Take money that the government collects from a specific source and then give it directly back to certain Americans as a payout. So let's break down the key parts of this proposal piece by piece. First, we're talking about a payment of around $2,000. And where does that money come from? It's not from general taxes. It's specifically from tariffs on goods imported into the country. Now, it wouldn't be for everybody. The idea is to target it to folks in middle income and lower income households. And the goal is kind of twofold: put some cash back in people's pockets, but also to help chip away at the national debt. But, and I really got to stress this, the most important thing to remember is right there at the bottom. This is just a proposal. It's an idea. It is not a law. All right, so we've got the what. The next logical question, of course, is when. If this thing were to actually happen, what kind of timeline are we even looking at? Well, the good news is we don't really have to speculate about this year. A direct quote pretty much clears that up. A payment in 2025? Nope. Off the table. That right there helps set our expectations and immediately shifts the focus forward. So that points us squarely at 2026, sometime next year. But here's a really interesting piece of context. The timing is suggested to be before the midterm elections. Now that's pretty significant, right? Placing a potential payout like this right in the thick of a major election cycle definitely adds another layer to it. And that leads us to maybe the biggest question for you personally. Who would actually qualify? I mean, what does middle and lower income even mean? Let's try to pin that down. To get a handle on this, let's look at some data from the Pew Research Center. It gives us a decent ballpark. According to them, if your household makes somewhere between, say, $56,000 and $167,000 a year, you're considered middle income. That's a huge range, and if you're below that, you'd be in the lower income bracket. So this gives us a rough sketch of the target audience for this kind of proposal. But, and this is a really big but, it's nowhere near that simple. You gotta take these numbers with a grain of salt. For one, these are just national averages, and the official income levels for this specific proposal, they haven't even been set. Plus, you know this, middle class in a small town is a whole different world from middle class in a major city. And then you have to factor in family size, so yeah, think of these numbers as a very, very general guideline, not the final word. Okay, let's follow the money. And this is quite literally a $300 billion question. Where on earth would the cash for a program this massive actually come from? I mean, this scale of this is just staggering. The Tax Foundation ran the numbers, and they estimate that to send a $2,000 check to about 150 million eligible adults, you're looking at a price tag of around $300 billion. That is a huge amount of money that has to come from somewhere specific. And this is where the math starts to get a little tricky. Take a look at this. The estimated cost is up here at $300 billion, but the actual tariff money that was collected by the end of September, that's down here at about $195 billion. So right off the bat, you can see there's a pretty big gap between the money they need and the money they actually have on hand. So how do you bridge that gap? Well, it looks like the proposal isn't just based on money that's already sitting in the bank. It seems to be relying on anticipated revenue, money they expect to get in the future. The Treasury, for example, is forecasting something like $3 trillion in tariff revenue over the next 10 years. So the thinking might be to fund the dividend now based on those big future earnings. Okay, so it's super important to realize this whole dividend idea didn't just pop up out of thin air. It's actually the latest chapter in an ongoing story of proposals for direct payments to Americans. Let's zoom out and see how it fits into the bigger picture. First off, let's talk about the words being used, because they matter. We've heard stimulus check, rebate, and now dividend.
A stimulus check, like we saw during the pandemic, is all about getting people to spend money to juice the economy. A rebate is kind of like getting a tax refund. But calling it a dividend, that suggests something else entirely. It's like you're a shareholder in a company and you're getting a piece of the profits. In this analogy, the company is the US government, the profit is the tariff revenue, and the shareholders, well, that's the American people.
And this timeline really shows you the evolution of the idea. It all became very real for millions of us back in 2020 and 2021 with the COVID-era stimulus checks. Then the conversation kept going. Earlier this year, there was talk of a so-called Doge dividend. A few months later, the idea got tied specifically to tariffs, first as a rebate, which actually led to a bill in the Senate. And all of that brings us right up to today with this new dividend proposal. You see the pattern, right? There's this recurring theme of finding ways to get government revenue directly back into the hands of citizens.
All right, we've gone through the what, the when, the who, and the how. So after digging into all of that, what's the one crucial takeaway? What's the bottom line here?
And really, it all comes down to this. Right now, this $2,000 tariff dividend is a political proposal. It's an idea being floated, a talking point for debate. It is not a done deal. It's not a confirmed government program that's about to cut checks. And knowing the difference between a proposal and a program is absolutely key to understanding this whole situation. And that leaves us with one last, much bigger question to chew on. If you step back from the specifics of this one proposal, the whole debate really boils down to a fundamental economic question. When our government collects money from global trade, from things like tariffs, what's the absolute best way to use that money to shape our own economy right here at home? That is the multi-trillion-dollar question at the very heart of this entire conversation.